welcome to Wednesday Debate Live with Taghreed Hussein here on Nile TV International. Tonight we'll be talking Africa and Egypt's role in Africa. As we all know, ever since the president assumed power, he has always been working on strengthening Egyptian-African relations, and this through intensifying Egypt's leading role in Africa. And many visits, a huge number of visits to the different African countries, as well as receiving African leaders and also senior officials in person. Throughout the last years, the president spared no effort to make Egypt a major attraction for all Africans on all levels through a large number of forums. One that we are going to be talking about today, the Aswan forum that has just concluded tonight, and stressing on Africa's unmatched potential, as we all know. Egypt took great strides and measures to strengthen its relations with the African states and also to expand the opportunities, affirming the sense of keenness to enhance this sense of cooperation with Africa. Many files actually consolidating security and stability, combating terrorism, developing the energy transition, this in addition to food security, also fighting water scarcity and climate change come along. Throughout tonight's episode, we'll be shedding more light on the Egyptian efforts in Africa and the realization of the strategic importance of the African continent, which is actually very significant. We have very significant achievements of the new republic in Africa. Tonight, I'm really honored to have with us to host Dr. Marwa Mamdouh Salem, who is the professor of political science, AUC, and she covers over the course of a distinctive career, Dr. Salem, as a diplomat, as a university professor, and also as a political researcher who had managed to focus on the politics of Africa and also Eastern Europe as she lived, she worked, and she studied and also excelled. Dr. Marwa, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for inviting me. A very good evening to you.
A very good evening to you and a very good evening to our dear viewers. Tonight, along with Dr. Marwa, we'll be shedding light on Egypt's efforts, as I said, and the pivotal role that Egypt plays in Africa. We do have more about the Aswan Forum that had witnessed distinctive speeches and speakers, and also a very rich agenda that has been there. We'll know more about the forum in this report, and we'll be back.
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi delivered a speech at the opening of the third edition of the Aswan Forum for Sustainable Peace and Development, stipulating that food security is the main challenge Africa has to deal with at present. The president stated that the platform is convening this year while the world is embroiled in tensions that have long-lasted repercussions on the political, economic and development levels. President al-Sisi urged African countries to join the forces to counter the negative impact of the crisis on food and energy security, in addition to the health, social and economic downturn caused by COVID-19. Through his speech, the head of state highlighted the food crisis experienced by the African continent at present, as it may take its toll on the safety and stability of the African societies, stressing that this predicament mandates taking a bundle of quick and effective measures in coordination with international partners and world community that would support African states in containing the crisis. The president underscored that this bundle of quick and effective measures must include the diversification of food sources, securing supply chains to the continent, as well as sustainable measures for supporting food security and agricultural sector, stressing that the continent needs to raise its agricultural production, paving the way for self-efficiency amid the ongoing challenges of water scarcity, price hikes and climate change. The chief of state also pointed out that the African Union is currently prioritizing work in the realm of food security, given the challenges of water scarcity and high prices. He added that the series of crises that have been happening must not pressure Africa to discontinue its actions towards establishing peace and security, achieving sustainable development, combating terrorism, and associated phenomena such as arms smuggling, widespread organized crime, human trafficking and illegal migration. Speaking of the efforts deployed by Egypt on that front, the president showcased that the country founded the Sahel Counter-Terrorism Center, hosts the AU Center for Post-Conflict Reconstruction and Development, and is delivering training for troops joining peacekeeping missions in Africa. President al-Sisi also encouraged African officials to actively present their visions on climate change mitigation and adaptation at the COP27 and push for the implementation of relevant international pledges. This is in light of Egypt hosting the COP27 next November in Sharm el-Sheikh at a time when the continent is struggling with desertification, water scarcity, and shortage in natural resources.
Egypt opens up to the world. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi meets with world leaders. Dr. Marwa, 900 representatives from more than 50 countries and a forum that actually comes timely, bringing Africans together. We're talking sustainable peace and development.
Right. I'd like first to start talking about the significance of the name, the nexus between peace and development. The question that most of the analysts and scholars and even laymen always ask, which of them comes first? What is the independent variable? Will peace lead to development, or development will be the thing, the very important factor leading to peace? Let me give you an example. Africa is suffering from a number of multiple conflicts, be them civil wars, be them terrorism and fundamentalism, be them tribal or sometimes ethnic confrontations. So in a region full of these kinds of conflicts, first of all, you cannot send your children to school. So you deprive them from the right, specifically girls, because the threats are very high. So you deprive them from the right to education. You cannot invite FDI, foreign direct investments. Whatever projects, small factories, will not be well installed in this place. By the end, your development rates will decrease. And with the decrease of development rates and the decrease in economic growth, do not expect but more and further conflicts. So by this, development is affecting peace, and peace is affecting development, and we continue rotating into this vicious circle. So what Aswan Forum is trying to tell, the main message of this forum is that you cannot but start with both of them.
Go in parallel.
Exactly.
Both of them go in parallel and go hand in hand. You cannot have peace without development.
And vice versa.
And vice versa, exactly. So different serious challenges, as you have mentioned, Dr. Marwa, and we have significant political as well as economic repercussions. We're all coming on the table, coming timely, and we have leaders seeing eye to eye on all those variables and all those challenges. So such forums are always a chance and always an opportunity for leaders to meet, to discuss important opportunities also in Africa. Not only challenges, but through solving challenges, we're seeing opportunities.
Indeed. But again, the timing. 2 years of pandemic, severe pandemic, the COVID-19 crisis, which indeed affected not only Africa, but the entire world. But bearing in mind that Africa is full of problems like the debt crisis, which still yet haven't been solved. Put into consideration also the internally displaced persons, the refugees problem, terrorism and fundamentalism, economic growth, all these stuff, water scarcity, food insecurity, aiming to achieve food security. So all these problems are still there, existing, while the pandemic has been hindering the economic growth of Africa. Right after a couple of years, by the end of February of this year, another blow took place, which is the Russian war in Ukraine. This is indeed affecting the global economy, specifically the supply chains. But most importantly, I would like to take you back to last fall, last autumn, and to Glasgow summit. There, the developed countries, they committed themselves to offer Africa around $100 billion in order to help them to transfer their economies into green economies and to try to decrease the carbon emissions. By the way, there were a lot of protests done by African youth calling for what is known as climate equality.
Yeah.
And very quickly to explain this, the African youth say what? They say that, well, industrial revolution started in Europe more than 2 centuries, more than 200 years ago.
Yeah.
So mainly the West, or the industrialized and most developed countries, are the one responsible for this climate change.
Yes.
And now Africa is starting to take its boom, the takeoff in industrialization. So this is a new hinder. That's why the European countries and the West and the developed countries decided to offer this amount of funding in order to help the African nations to adopt better technologies, to transfer the economies into a more environment-friendly ones. But here comes the role of the war, the Russian war, because so far these amounts of fundings did not arrive yet. And to put it in another way, bearing in mind the new commitments to foster the defense system in Europe to face these new security challenges, there are priorities now.
Yeah.
So the Aswan platform is calling for what? For resilience. First of all, to identify very well what are the challenges and to prioritize them. What comes before what?
For the other. Yeah.
And the important message is about solidarity. So it is about time that, well, because we can see all these changes happening in the global economy and all this suffering, then there is a very important role which the African countries have to play together. And that's what can be called resilience. How can the African nations together try to exert all efforts in order to find solutions for the problems that we mentioned? In a way or another, of course, this will not be solved in one day or in a moment, but at least trying to find what Dr. Boutros Ghali said, innovative ideas, innovative solutions, thinking out of the box. How can these countries face the global threat, and how at the same time they can exploit all the huge, massive resources, be them natural resources, be them human resources, in order to hand in hand meet these threats.
That's great that you've mentioned out of the box, because we're all thinking out of the box in preparation also for the COP27.
Right.
And glad that you've mentioned also Glasgow, because 150 days or less to go to COP27, and Egypt is definitely working very hard on an event that is going to make headlines throughout the world. The forum, Aswan Forum, came with a special emphasis on the impacts of climate change. It also comes timely before COP27.
Exactly.
So how can we promote the sense of collaboration among the initiators, in your opinion, that would reinforce peace and sustainability and at the same time put in the forefront combating climate change?
I'd like to emphasize that the problem of peace and security, like His Excellency President Sisi mentioned, and we have seen this in the report, without peace, you cannot claim that you are on the right path towards development. And that's why the African leaders, a couple of years ago, they even extended the initiative silencing the guns by 2020. They extended it a decade further to be 2030, because without silencing the guns, it will be very hard to achieve other things. But preparing for COP27 coming next November, this forum is important. Why? Because in Africa, we have a very big problem of desertification and of water scarcity at the same time. Due to the climate changes, Africa lost around 12 million hectares of cultivated lands. Think of the problem in Lake Chad Basin and how the lake has shrunk and lost big portion of its water. Think of what happened in Lake Turkana, what happened in Lake Turkana in Kenya, in Eastern Africa, what happened in Shabelle River in Somalia, where 2 million people used to live and cultivate their lands there. But in this point, I'd like to highlight that sometimes these changes in our Mother Nature it happens because of natural reasons like desertification, or it happens by our hands.
Yeah.
Because when some countries take unilateral decisions to build dams or whatever, then Lake Turkana here starts to suffer. Then Juba and Shibil River in Somalia started to dry. So here comes again the message of the Aswan Forum, working together. It is very important to coordinate as Africans together, because the threat is coming from outside sometimes and from even inside the continent due to lack of coordination. So when the people meet together, and by the people in Aswan, I mean the two levels.
Yeah.
I mean formal level, official level, and I mean track 2 diplomacy. The civil societies, Africans, are invited and participated strongly in the workshops.
In what way are the civil society helping and actually promoting and supporting the initiatives that are there on the table? How can we integrate them in the scene? Because their presence is very important if we're talking opportunities.
Yes, because it is about addressing the root causes of the problems.
Yes.
The governments, they sit together, officials sit together, and you've mentioned the visits which His Excellency President Sisi, many visits he
in
made
person,
to Africa,
of course.
and many officials and counterparts His Excellency received in Cairo. But all this, it comes on the level of formal politics. Informalities are very important when it comes to politics as well, because the governments, they set and design the policies, they start to implement it on the ground. On the ground means dealing with the people.
Yeah, the people-to-people relations.
Exactly. So this is the role of the civil society, is connecting the people together, bringing their voices to the governments and to the policy makers and to the decision makers. When civil society organization for example, attends this forum, they know what the people in very remote areas want. So they can bring their voices to the negotiations, to the talks. And when they listen, I mean the civil society organizations and groups listen to the formal, the voice of the formal people talking, then they can take this voice and transfer it back to the people. So this kind of linking between the formalities and informalities, that's why their existence is very important.
Yes, and in his speech to the forum, the President has highlighted that Aswan Forum was being held at a critical time when the international community was facing economic challenges as well that affects food and affects energy security. So again, this is considered also to be among the most important topics raised.
Of course.
And among the challenges, food and energy security.
Well, I am a fan of realism as a school of thoughts, as a school in political analysis. Before the COVID-19 crisis, before the Russian war in Ukraine, many people were calling for idealism, for liberalism as school of thought. I was one of those who kept thinking of politics on the ground. That's what Aswan Forum is doing now, bringing politics, real politique, what we call as scholars and as analysts, to the negotiation tables. So it is the idea of, well, after the war, we are going to face more and more pressure in terms of food security. How are we going to meet this problem? In Egypt, we have around a total cultivated area of 9.5 million fidans, and we are looking forward to increase it by 3 million more. But this means more demand on water sources. In order to get water, I'm giving you Egypt as an example. We have the River Nile as the sole and main water source. So we need, of course, to coordinate with the countries, the upstream countries. So this is an example. I cannot deal with the food security without thinking of the rest of the chain from where water will be brought. Now we have the problem of wheat, for example, after the war in Ukraine. A very important source of wheat is now facing troubles. What will be the other alternatives? In Africa, the soil is very fertile. How can we make use of this? All this needs coordination. No one can work together. No one can achieve development and peace and security, no one can work alone, and no one can achieve development and economic growth alone. This is, again, the importance of such a platform like the Aswan Forum. It is held in a hybrid way, face-to-face, combined with also using technology.
Yes.
And we all actually used a lot technology during the COVID-19 pandemic when there were a lot of restrictions. So it's now good because it allows
we got used.
Exactly. It allows people and actors who are far away to still contribute to the talks
close.
and to the suggestions. The workshops will, of course, that concluded tonight, that of course will come out with a lot of suggestions and new answers to a lot of problems. And continue to talk, and discussion always opens more windows and new windows.
Definitely, we're opening windows to the entire world, and from Egypt comes many messages, messages of partnership, messages definitely of attracting the world attention to the mother of the world, because the sense of partnership comes from here. And Aswan Forum was a great opportunity. Samira Said also extends this sense of opening up to the world when she did sing Dr. Marwa, Kullina Insan, we are all one. And Samira, with her great vibes, also sends great messages of peace, love to the whole world. We send them as well to Africa and to the whole world tonight. Let's watch.
رغم اختلاف اللسان
We're talking African challenges, but where there are challenges, there are also opportunities. And through this sense of partnership, in order to face such challenges, is among them the Egyptian-EU partnership, in order to help solve the different African challenges. How do you see the role of the international community, Dr. Marwa, and especially the Egypt-EU partnership in that respect?
Well, as I mentioned before, we listened to Samira Said,
yes,
lovely song.
She did break she sent like positive vibes, sure.
Exactly. You have to be very optimistic despite all these challenges. And that's why Aswan Forum is calling for resilience, for sustainability. The point is that, as I mentioned, no one can work together. No success can be achieved by only one actor. Africa is blessed by having many partners, specifically the African Union. EU indeed is a very active partner to the entire continent, let alone to Egypt. The only point that I'd like here to raise is that what is the impact of the Russian war on this partnership? Because Russia as well is a very active partner in Africa. China is a very active partner in Africa. The problem of this war is that it polarized the international community. Now you are asking about the role of the international community. The international community before February 2022 is something, and now it completely shifted towards a new path, because the international community is no longer one homogeneous bloc. These 3 decades of peace, international peace somehow, if I can call it like this. We heard at that time, early 1990s, about Fukuyama's argument, the end of history, no more wars after the termination of the Cold War. But after 3 decades, now we can see the same vibes of the Cold War that dominated the international community and international relations right after the Second World War in mid-40s, 1945, until 1990. So what is the future of these kind of partnerships, either with Africa or even with Latin America or whatever other southern countries, if I can call? It is very hard to predict. But what I can assure you is that these partnerships were born to continue. it will not be terminated. But I cannot turn my back to the fact that increasing the expenditure on defense purposes, on military in Europe, will indeed cause some repercussions on any external partnership, because the budget will be facing some pressure. We have all witnessed how Finland, for example, is ending its self-neutrality status that lasted after the Cold War for nearly after the Second World War, nearly for 70 years. Now Finland is joining the NATO. Joining the NATO means more commitments, more defense expenditure. The same can be said about Germany, that is allocating 100 billion euros. So I cannot claim that these drastic changes are not going to cause some repercussions, of course, on external partnership. But looking at Egypt and the EU, this is a bright example. These are good news, if I can call.
Yes, definitely. It's a very successful partnership.
A very successful model, specifically in terms of gender equality, trying to foster gender equality, education, startups. By the way, we have also to emphasize the role of the RECs in Africa. The RECs are the regional economic communities. The COMESA, which Egypt is presiding, is heading this year, has a very promising role and a very successful model. The initiative known as 50 million women in Africa. And how these women are launching their startups, their small projects, and how there is a platform, online platform, and this is another blessing of that COVID-19 experience. They are sharing their successful stories and experiences online on their platform, 50 million African women.
That's really interesting, you know, because Africa, we are not going to reach the Africa that we aspire unless we do have this sense of women empowerment. And Egypt is giving a great example in that respect, of respect to women and to women empowerment. If we talk about successful stories and successful women in Africa, what would you say?
I will look with great pride to the fact that we have African women who reached the position of heading their states. I will look with great pride to the women who go to cultivate in the farms carrying their babies. You know, this way of carrying babies over their backs. I will look again with very pride to initiatives like these 50 million African women and how they can launch their
It gives,
startups.
of course, a great sense of optimism to the future of Africa.
And I will look to the role of the Kindaka, for example, in political transitions, which we saw in Sudan 3 years ago. So women, they compose half of the society. Yes, this is true. We have in Egypt 50 million women. So how come we don't empower them? By the way, women empowerment means empowering the entire society.
Of course,
So Egypt has here another model, successful story to share with African countries. I totally believe that the start should be from education. Educating girls is the really important milestone here if we'd like to have finally a woman truly empowered, capable to launch her projects, capable to take care of the family, because here we have a twofold mission. This is our destiny. We can be successful at work, we can be successful with our family as well. And as you've just mentioned, in Egypt we have this very strong legislative framework that protects women's rights. We have women everywhere, in politics, in other sectors, in education, in health sectors. So, and we have this also in Africa. So I will always look with great pride to the Egyptians' experience and to the entire African experience in this regard.
Definitely, we need all those bright examples, because those are the ones who are going to make a difference. Among the president's speech and was talking about other challenges that must be dealt with, mainly the sense of peace and stability and security in the continent, protecting African countries from terrorism proliferation, weapons smuggling, human trafficking, and illegal immigration. All those are other challenges facing Africa that the President talked about in his speech.
Specifically terrorism and fundamentalism. And this takes us back to the nexus of development and peace. One of the important factors which terrorist groups use to attract and to recruit African youth is economic hardships.
Yeah.
So development here is important. And again, the question, how can we develop a region if there is no security? I here look with great caution to the situation in the Sahel, specifically after, of course, the disengagement of the French troops there. The triangle of the three beloved countries of Niger, Burkina Faso and Mali. In this in this part of Africa, fundamental and terrorist groups are very active. Even in Nigeria, we have Boko Haram. Even in the east, still we have Al-Shabaab, we have Al-Qaeda, we have ISIS at some places infiltrating from Libya. The problem of post-revolutionary political transitions. We still have this shaky political situation in Libya, for example. The elections that should have been conducted by the end of the year in December 21 wasn't conducted. In Sudan, still the situation is very controversial. In Somalia, luckily, we have the last presidential elections went safely. A very good step, but the entire overall security situation is still not, of course, stable. We have the problem of piracy, by the way, in the Red Sea and in the Gulf of Guinea. So security is truly an important factor which we need to address it with great care in order to reach sustainable development.
Yeah, sustainability is considered to be a main aim, and Egypt seeks to crystallize a joint African vision that mainly accelerates the main agenda and SDGs. We have efforts supporting sustainable development goals, and we cannot forget, of course, the Egyptian presidency of the African Union that has been very fruitful, a very fruitful year for Egypt.
Exactly.
And we have worked very hard to achieve sustainability in Africa.
I'd like here to recall the two main stunning, shining examples. We have, as mentioned in the report, we have the Sahel, Sahara and Sahara Center to Encounter Terrorism. The headquarters is here in Egypt, and a lot of African brothers are trained here in order to encounter terrorist threats. And we have also, we are hosting the headquarters of the AU Post-Conflict Center for Reconstruction, Development and Peace.
Yeah.
So these two examples are really very promising, how Egypt is hosting the headquarters of these two important how can I say it, agencies or organizations, and how the African brothers are very welcome here to be trained to increase the capacity building of the African people.
Yes, on more than one level, you know. Here at the premises of the National Media Authority, we have a special center to train Africans also. African journalists.
Yes, I used to lecture there.
Yes, yes, me too. So I mean, it's always great to highlight more than one tool, and they all definitely aim and target a very noble cause at the end of the day.
I'd like to tell you something. This part is somehow theoretical, but it is nice to know. As political scholars, when we talk about foreign policy, we have like a basket of instruments, which we call it continuum of power. It's like a line or spectrum.
Both are all are important.
Exactly. On the right we have soft power, and on the extreme left we have hard power. But the successful country is the one that employs a basket of all of these instruments, specifically soft power, cultural relations, exchanging experiences. And Egypt here stands on this bright white side in its foreign policy towards Africa and towards our brotherly and sisterly African nations. So using the Center of Training African Journalists, I have my experience there, and it's a very good platform to exchange ideas.
Yes.
And those brothers and sisters, they return back to their countries and
with great memories and friends.
And they tell what they
Yes.
saw, what they touched by
And
themselves.
also at the National Training Academy,
Right,
the African Leadership
right.
Program
Of
is
course.
a great one that, you know what is really interesting, interviewing some of the graduates, what they told me about the fact that many of them, when they return back to their home, to the African countries, they themselves become leaders in more than one speciality.
Right,
So,
and we have the Nasser Fellowship.
yes.
Every year, a number of young African men and women,
Yeah.
they come here to Egypt, they visit the Nasser Museum, we start talking to them about the historical setting, how Africa very bravely worked together in the 1950s and 60s and 70s to encounter imperialism and end colonialism. All these are examples of the importance of solidarity, African solutions for African problems. This is really very important, specifically that when the world now is very much overwhelmed by these global events of the pandemic and of the war in
Yeah.
Eastern Europe, now it is time for Africa to stand hand in hand. There is no other way out except working together. And we have the African Union 2063 agenda.
Yeah.
It is very important. We have 41 years to work very seriously in order to put all the objectives of the agenda, implement it and put it on the ground and transform it from just objectives into real economic and political strategies and social and cultural strategies on the ground that, of course, should improve the lifestyle of the African citizen. This
Yeah.
is also quite important.
Yes, improving the lifestyle of the African citizen. And we in Egypt, as you know, Dr. Marwa, that the president is mainly, of course, treasuring the human identity, the human capital of the country. So we do have here a treasure called the human capital. And another treasure, if we are going to talk about the African youth, and they are
60%.
themselves are considered to be
60%
a
of
great
Africans.
engine for growth.
Of course.
So,
of course.
so
60%
preparing
of them.
African youth for leadership, in your opinion, and I guess also at the Aswan Forum, we do have a participation on behalf of the African youth too.
And we have the Youth Forum held in Egypt every year. This
Yes.
is another very active platform to bring the young men and women
With
together.
the forum held, if we can have a flashback also in Aswan itself, that was a beautiful scene.
Of
that
course.
we have seen.
Of
Yeah.
course, of course. And
One
what
of
I
the most
like,
successful.
you know what I like in the Aswan Forum is that it's not once and for all. No. This is the third
This is the third edition. Yeah.
Despite this pandemic hindrance. But that's very good. And that's again the meaning of sustainability. It's not enough just to build one brick and leave. It is about continuing to do efforts, sincere efforts. Again, I am confirming there is no way out of all these crises except working together. The 50 and more something countries in the continent, they have to work together, no way out. And I think that this is the main idea in the minds and in the hearts of both the officials, African officials, and of the African nations, be them young men, be them young women. They should all work together.
Yes, definitely. This sense of togetherness is very important, and Egypt managed to bring Africa in this sense of togetherness at the Aswan Forum that concluded today. How are we working on making Africa as a market, in your opinion, and as an engine for growth? We're always talking sustainability, and this is very important. This is the third edition. While we are thinking of the future of Africa and the future of Africans, what does it take so that Africa would become an engine for global growth?
Well, first of all, we have to admit that Africa is very rich.
Yeah.
In natural resources.
Many
and-
potential even for Africa,
So
definitely still
the base
unleashed,
is
not
here.
unleashed.
The
Yeah.
strong base is here. It is how are we going to exploit, to employ this massive human and natural capacity. I totally believe in the effect of education. It all starts, perhaps because I work also as a university professor, but it all starts with education.
Awareness.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And education is not only going to school. Education is about this.
And information. Education and information.
Exactly.
They are interrelated.
This is one point. Again, there is this creating this sense of identity. We are Africans.
Yes,
This is
we
very
have to
important.
we feel proud that we are African.
This is very important, and the main factor that made the European Union experience succeed is building this sense of citizenship.
Yeah,
So-
this sense of belonging.
Exactly, to the continent. So we are all Africans, no matter what languages we are talking. And by the way, there are very sincere efforts has been conducted by many African scholars to create what is known as lingua franca. We have to find a common language to use. It will be quite illogical to keep communicating in English or French or German or Spanish. So
And what are out-of-the-box ideas in that regard? I mean, this is very interesting.
Some professors, and I attended actually before the pandemic in
Yeah.
Mwalimu Nyerere Memorial Academy in Tanzania, I attended a conference about state building there.
Yeah.
They were talking about Swahili and Arabic as lingua franca. So instead of communicating in the languages that were forced on us, it is very important to learn, of course, foreign languages, but we have to agree on one of these.
In common.
Exactly. Hausa language, something like this. I used to study Hausa in the University of Khartoum while I was studying there. It's very good to know the cultures, the African cultures, because the language is not only words. The language is the facade of culture in the dressing code, in the food,
The minute
in the
details
customs.
count.
Yeah, exactly. So this brings more the people together, and that's the level of the grassroots, which I see it as very important mean of bringing African people together. So education, creating this sense of identity, increasing productivity. In order to achieve economic growth, you have to increase your productivity capacity. Whatever you are producing, even if handicrafts, like the beautiful necklace you are wearing.
thank you.
So this is, again, is important. But still, we need also to decrease corruption. Corruption, it destroys any sincere efforts. And Egypt has also this very successful story to tell. And Egypt 3 years ago hosted the first African corruption conference in
Yes,
Sharm el-Sheikh.
exactly,
And,
yeah.
and we have seen the conference came out with a lot of recommendations. Unfortunately, this pandemic issue, of course, it caused some sluggishness in implementation by the African nations, but still, it is important issue. Fifth recommendation, if I may call, is institutionalization. And this institutionalization issue, building the bureaucracy, building a sophisticated African bureaucracy, is an important idea which has been said in Aswan Forum. So the recipe is quite long. But
Yeah.
let's start with education, I believe.
Yes, start with education, and also I love the idea of startups, because startups and entrepreneurship are also playing a very important role if we're talking about the future of Africa.
Yes.
And talking about digitization that is really overwhelming in today's
Yes,
world.
of course, and the startups is directly related to increasing productivity.
Yeah.
And here comes the example of the 50 Million African Women Initiative. And it increases the salary of the households. So it also causes women empowerment. You see, it is all interconnected.
Yeah,
all these factors
interrelated.
together. Yes,
Yes.
exactly.
Well, we can talk like hours about Africa and
I
the
wish I
African
may.
potential.
I wish I might, but I can see that
We have a
the
top
time,
stories.
yeah,
we have
yeah,
a top
flies
stories
by.
on the top of the hour. I thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting
Dr.
me.
Marwa Mamdouh Salem, Professor of Political Science at AUC and our renowned researcher tonight. Thank you so much for all the information and the added value, Dr. Marwa.
Thank you very much, and wishing Africa a bright future.
Definitely, we wish Africa, viva Egypt, viva Africa. Thank you so much, and thank you, dear viewers, for joining us. That was Wednesday Debate Live with Taghreed Hussein. Many thanks for watching.